Eleanor Whitmore lived in a grand house on the outskirts of town, a mansion that reflected her wealth and status. She was a woman who had seen both joy and heartbreak in her life. Her husband Charles had passed away unexpectedly when their son Daniel was just a teenager. Since then, Eleanor had poured all her energy into raising Daniel, ensuring he never felt deprived of anything, love, care, or opportunities. But there was one thing she couldn't change: Daniel's physical condition. Daniel had been born with a rare neurological disorder that left him unable to walk. From a young age, he relied on a wheelchair to get around. Despite his disability, Daniel grew up to be an intelligent, witty, and kind-hearted man. He loved books, music, and conversations about philosophy. His mind was sharp, his humor infectious, and his optimism inspiring. Yet no matter how much he tried to focus on the positives, there were moments when the weight of his limitations pressed down on him. Eleanor saw those moments, the quiet sighs, the fleeting looks of sadness, and they broke her heart every time. As Daniel entered his early 30s, Eleanor found herself worrying more than ever. She wasn't getting any younger, and the thought of leaving Daniel alone terrified her. Who would take care of him? Who would ensure he was safe, happy, and loved after she was gone? She knew Daniel could hire professional caregivers, but she wanted something deeper for him: a family. Someone who would not only assist him physically but also share his joys, sorrows, and dreams. That's when an idea began to form in her mind, an unconventional plan that she believed could secure Daniel's future. Eleanor decided to hire 3 young women as live-in caregivers for Daniel, but with a twist. Each woman would sign a contract, agreeing to marry Daniel within 2 years if they felt compatible with him. It sounded extreme, even to Eleanor herself, but she convinced herself it was the best way to ensure Daniel wouldn't spend his life alone. After all, these women would have plenty of time to get to know him, and Daniel would have options. If none of them worked out, at least he'd still have dedicated caregivers by his side. With this plan in mind, Eleanor placed discreet advertisements in local newspapers and online platforms. She carefully screened dozens of applicants, looking for qualities like kindness, patience, and reliability. Finally, she narrowed it down to 3 candidates: Maya, Sophie, and Priya. Each of them came from different backgrounds and had unique reasons for accepting the job. Maya was a single mother, in her late 20s, struggling to make ends meet. Her son Liam was 6 years old, and she often juggled multiple jobs to provide for him. When she heard about the position, she hesitated at first. The idea of living with someone else's family felt strange, especially under such unusual terms. But the salary Eleanor offered was generous enough to cover Liam's school fees and give him a stable home environment. For Maya, it wasn't just about money. It was about giving her child the life he deserved. Still, she couldn't shake off the feeling that this arrangement might come with complications. Sophie, on the other hand, was in her mid-20s and full of restless energy. She had dropped out of college after losing interest in her studies and spent the last few years drifting from one odd job to another. Sophie wasn't sure what she wanted from life, but she craved purpose. When she met Eleanor and Daniel, she was immediately drawn to Daniel's warmth and intelligence. Though the marriage clause gave her pause, she figured it was worth a shot. What did she have to lose? Besides, she told herself, maybe this experience would help her figure out what she truly wanted. Priya was the youngest of the 3, barely 24. She had recently moved to the country from India, hoping to start fresh after a difficult breakup. Adjusting to a new culture and language had been challenging, and she often felt isolated. The prospect of steady work and a place to stay appealed to her immensely. While the idea of marrying someone she barely knew seemed daunting, Priya reasoned that people married for far less practical reasons all the time. Perhaps this could be her chance to build a new life, one filled with stability and hope. When the 3 women arrived at the Whitmore estate, they were greeted by Eleanor, who explained the rules and expectations clearly. They would each have separate rooms, rotating shifts to care for Daniel, and regular check-ins with her to discuss progress. At the end of 2 years, if any of them felt a genuine connection with Daniel, they would honor the agreement and marry him. If not, they were free to leave without repercussions. It was a straightforward deal, or so it seemed. For Daniel, meeting the three women was both exciting and nerve-wracking. He had always dreamed of finding love, but he never imagined it happening like this. As he sat in his wheelchair, greeting Maya, Sophie, and Priya for the first time, he couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Would they see him as a person, or merely as a responsibility? Would they treat him with kindness, or simply go through the motions because of the paycheck? And most importantly, would any of them actually fall in love with him? The first few days were awkward for everyone. Maya struggled to balance her maternal instincts with professionalism, often hovering over Daniel to ensure he was comfortable. Sophie threw herself into making Daniel laugh, organizing games and activities to keep him entertained. Priya, quieter and more reserved, watched everything unfold with cautious curiosity. Though their approaches differed, one thing became clear. None of them were prepared for the emotional roller coaster that awaited them. Unbeknownst to any of them, Eleanor observed everything from a distance. She hoped her plan would bring happiness to Daniel, but deep down, she couldn't ignore the nagging doubts creeping into her mind. Was she doing the right thing? Could love really be orchestrated like this? Only time would tell. As the weeks turned into months, the initial awkwardness between Daniel and the three women began to fade. Life inside the Whitmore mansion settled into a rhythm, though it was far from ordinary. Each woman brought something unique to the household, shaping not only Daniel's days but also their own lives in ways they hadn't anticipated. Maya quickly established herself as the backbone of the caregiving team. She approached her role with a no-nonsense attitude, ensuring that Daniel's daily needs were met efficiently and without fuss. From helping him dress in the mornings to preparing nutritious meals tailored to his dietary restrictions, Maya left nothing to chance. Her maternal instincts shone through in everything she did. Yet, there was more to Maya than just practicality. During quiet moments when Daniel felt frustrated or down about his limitations, Maya would sit beside him and listen patiently. "You're stronger than you think," she'd say gently, her voice filled with sincerity. Over time, Daniel came to trust her completely, knowing she had his best interests at heart. Sophie, on the other hand, injected energy and spontaneity into their routine. Unlike Maya's methodical approach, Sophie thrived on creativity and adventure. She encouraged Daniel to step outside his comfort zone, coaxing him to try new things despite his physical challenges. One afternoon, she wheeled him out to the garden and taught him how to paint using watercolors. Another day, she played lively music and convinced him to dance. Well, as much as someone in a wheelchair could dance. Though Daniel laughed and enjoyed these moments, Sophie's enthusiasm sometimes bordered on recklessness. Once she suggested they take a trip to the nearby lake, ignoring Maya's warnings about uneven terrain. When Daniel got stuck in soft mud near the shore, Sophie panicked before Maya stepped in to help. Despite her occasional missteps, Sophie's zest for life was contagious, and Daniel found himself looking forward to her unpredictable ideas. Priya, the quietest of the three, took a different approach altogether. At first, she kept mostly to herself, observing the dynamics between Daniel and the others while quietly fulfilling her duties. But as she grew more comfortable, Priya revealed a depth of empathy and patience that set her apart. She noticed small details others might overlook, how Daniel preferred his tea slightly sweeter than usual, or how he liked to read poetry aloud late at night. Priya made it a point to remember these little things, surprising him with thoughtful gestures. On one chilly evening, she draped a warm blanket over his lap before he even asked for it. These acts of kindness didn't go unnoticed. Daniel often thanked her with a soft smile, feeling genuinely cared for. What none of them expected, however, was how deeply their interactions would affect them personally. As they spent more time together, conversations shifted from casual pleasantries to meaningful exchanges. Daniel, who had always been guarded about sharing his vulnerabilities, began opening up. He spoke about his childhood, the loneliness of being the different kid at school, the frustration of watching his peers run and play while he sat on the sidelines. He talked about his dreams of becoming a writer someday, though he doubted anyone would take him seriously. And then there were the harder truths. The fear of burdening those around him, the ache of wondering if anyone could truly love him beyond pity. In turn, the women shared pieces of themselves too. Maya confessed how hard it was to be away from her son Liam during long shifts. She worried constantly about whether she was doing enough for him, especially since taking this job meant less time spent at home. Sophie admitted her feelings of failure after dropping out of college, revealing that she often felt aimless and unsure of her place in the world. Priya, whose past had remained largely a mystery until now, opened up about her painful breakup back in India. She spoke of the shame she'd faced from her family and the hopelessness she'd felt before deciding to start anew in America. These shared stories created a bond among them that went beyond the surface. They weren't just caregiver and patient anymore. They were friends, confidants, and supporters. Even Eleanor noticed the change. Though she still monitored the situation closely, she couldn't deny the warmth and camaraderie that filled the house. For the first time in years, laughter echoed through the halls and genuine smiles replaced polite facades. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. The marriage clause loomed over everyone like an unspoken shadow. Maya wrestled with guilt, wondering if she was betraying her son by considering the possibility of staying permanently. Sophie struggled with conflicting emotions. She admired Daniel greatly, but wasn't sure if she could see him as anything more than a friend. Priya, meanwhile, found herself growing increasingly attached to Daniel, though she tried to hide it. She feared what might happen if her feelings deepened further, especially given the unconventional circumstances. Eleanor, ever watchful, picked up on these undercurrents. She saw the way Maya hesitated when Daniel complimented her cooking, the way Sophie bit her lip nervously whenever the topic of relationships arose, and the way Priya lingered just a moment longer than necessary when adjusting Daniel's blanket. It troubled her. Had she pushed too hard? Was her plan causing more harm than good? One evening after dinner, Eleanor gathered the three women in the sitting room for a rare heart-to-heart conversation. "I know this arrangement isn't easy," she began, her tone softer than usual. "And I want you all to know that I appreciate everything you've done for Daniel. But I need to ask, are any of you truly happy here?" The question hung heavy in the air. Maya glanced at her hands, unsure how to respond. Sophie looked away, biting her thumbnail, a nervous habit she thought she'd outgrown. Priya stared at the floor, her cheeks flushing slightly. None of them answered right away. Finally, Maya spoke up. "It's complicated," she said honestly. "I care about Daniel and I'm grateful for this opportunity, but I can't stop thinking about my son. I don't know if I can commit to this. Not fully." Sophie nodded in agreement. "Same here. I mean, Daniel's amazing. He really is, but I'm not sure I'm ready for something this serious. I don't want to hurt him." Priya remained silent, her thoughts swirling. She wanted to speak, to express the growing affection she felt for Daniel, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, signaling her understanding. Eleanor sighed, realizing the weight of her decision was finally catching up to her. "I never meant for this to feel like a burden," she admitted. "All I wanted was to give Daniel a chance at happiness. Maybe I went about it the wrong way." Her honesty struck a chord with the women. For the first time, they saw Eleanor not just as a wealthy benefactor, but as a mother desperate to protect her child. It humanized her, making them reflect on their own roles in this unusual experiment. That night, as the mansion grew quiet, each of them lay awake, lost in thought. Maya wondered if she could balance her responsibilities to Liam with her growing attachment to Daniel. Sophie questioned whether she was capable of committing to anyone, let alone someone as extraordinary as Daniel, and Priya grappled with her feelings, torn between caution and the desire to embrace something real. Little did they know, their journey was far from over. The bonds they had formed, and the challenges they faced, were only the beginning of a story that would test their courage, redefine their relationships, and ultimately lead them to unexpected truths about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. As the weeks rolled on, the cracks in the delicate balance of life at the Whitmore mansion began to widen. The initial harmony that had settled among Daniel, Maya, Sophie, and Priya started to show signs of strain. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, bubbling up during moments of stress or miscommunication. What had once seemed like a well-oiled machine of caregiving and companionship was now teetering on the edge of chaos. The first major incident occurred one sunny Saturday morning, when Sophie decided it was time for Daniel to break out of his shell. She had been planning this outing for days, a trip to the nearby park where they could enjoy fresh air and maybe even attempt a short hike along an accessible trail designed for wheelchairs. Sophie's intentions were good. She wanted Daniel to experience something new, something exciting. But her enthusiasm blinded her to the potential risks involved. Maya immediately voiced her concerns when Sophie announced the plan over breakfast. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her brow furrowed as she glanced at Daniel. "Some of those trails might not be as smooth as they say. We don't want to risk damaging his chair, or worse." Sophie waved off Maya's worries with a dismissive laugh. "Relax, Maya," she said breezily. "It'll be fine. I've checked everything online and the reviews say it's totally safe. Besides, Daniel deserves a little adventure, doesn't he?" Daniel hesitated, glancing between the two women. He trusted both of them, but their opposing attitudes left him unsure. On one hand, Sophie's excitement was infectious, and he did long for a change of scenery. On the other hand, Maya's cautious nature had always kept him grounded. After a moment of deliberation, he nodded reluctantly. "Let's give it a try," he said, forcing a smile. "What's the worst that could happen?" Priya, who had been quietly observing the exchange, offered a hesitant nod of support. She didn't voice her opinion, she rarely did, but her eyes flickered with unease. Something about Sophie's confidence felt reckless, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. The group set off for the park shortly after lunch. The weather was perfect, with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze rustling through the trees. At first, the outing went smoothly. They strolled along paved pathways, chatting and laughing as Daniel soaked in the beauty of the outdoors. Sophie pushed his wheelchair enthusiastically, pointing out birds perched on branches and colorful flowers blooming by the trail. For a while, it seemed like Sophie's plan was working perfectly. But then they reached the section of the trail Sophie had been so eager to explore, a narrow dirt path winding into the woods. The sign at the entrance claimed it was wheelchair-friendly, but as soon as they ventured onto it, problems arose. The ground was uneven, dotted with rocks and roots that jutted out unpredictably. Sophie struggled to maneuver the wheelchair, its wheels catching on bumps and sinking slightly into soft patches of earth. "Maybe we should turn back," Maya suggested, her voice tight with concern. "This isn't safe." No, we're almost there," Sophie insisted, pushing harder. "Just a little farther." Her determination only made things worse. A few minutes later, disaster struck. The front wheel of Daniel's chair hit a particularly large rock, causing the entire contraption to tilt precariously. Before anyone could react, Daniel found himself stuck, unable to move forward or backward. Panic set in as Sophie frantically tried to lift the chair, but it was too heavy for her to handle alone. Maya rushed to help, her face pale with anger and fear. Together, she and Sophie managed to free the wheelchair, but the damage was done. Daniel sat silently, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests, humiliation washing over him. He hated feeling helpless, especially in front of others. When they finally returned to the main path and headed back toward the parking lot, the mood was somber. That evening, the tension erupted into a full-blown argument. Maya confronted Sophie in the kitchen, her voice rising with each word. "What were you thinking? You could have seriously hurt him. Do you even realize how dangerous that was?" Sophie crossed her arms defensively, her cheeks flushed. "I was trying to do something nice for him. Maybe if you weren't so controlling all the time, he'd actually get to have some fun." "He doesn't need fun if it means risking his safety," Maya shot back. "You're supposed to be here to take care of him, not drag him into reckless situations." Their voices carried through the house, drawing Priya and Daniel into the fray. Daniel, sitting in his usual spot in the living room, looked visibly upset. Priya hovered nearby, torn between wanting to intervene and fearing she'd make things worse. Eleanor, hearing the commotion from upstairs, descended quickly to restore order. Her presence silenced the room, but the damage had already been done. The rift between Maya and Sophie was palpable, and Daniel looked more defeated than ever. After a tense silence, Eleanor addressed the group. "This isn't what I intended when I brought you all here," she said firmly. "We're supposed to be working together for Daniel's sake. If we can't do that, then perhaps this arrangement isn't going to work." Her words hung heavily in the air, leaving everyone to reflect on their roles in the situation. Maya retreated to her room, guilt gnawing at her for losing her temper. Sophie paced anxiously, replaying the day's events in her mind and realizing she may have gone too far. Priya stayed with Daniel, offering quiet comfort as he processed his emotions. And Eleanor, watching from afar, wondered if her plan had caused more harm than good. Later that night, Daniel lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. The day's events replayed in his mind: the embarrassment of being stranded, the heated argument between Maya and Sophie, and the weight of knowing that his future depended on these three women. He felt a pang of guilt for putting them in such an impossible position. Was he truly worth the effort? Did any of them genuinely want to stay, or were they merely fulfilling a contractual obligation? By the time dawn broke, Daniel had made up his mind. Enough was enough. It was time to confront the truth, not just with himself, but with everyone else. He couldn't let them continue living under the shadow of Eleanor's agreement. Whatever happened next, it needed to come from a place of honesty and choice. As sunlight streamed through the windows of the mansion, Daniel summoned the courage to call a meeting. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he owed it to himself, and to the women who had become such an integral part of his life, to speak his mind. Little did he know, this decision would set off a chain reaction that would change everything. The next morning, Daniel called everyone to the large sitting room in the Whitmore mansion. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, and no one quite knew what to expect. Maya, Sophie, Priya, and Eleanor gathered around, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Daniel sat in his wheelchair at the center of the room, his hands resting on his lap. For the first time since they had arrived, he looked completely resolute, like a man who had made up his mind about something important. "I need to say something," Daniel began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "And I want all of you to listen carefully because this is coming straight from my heart." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "When Mom first told me about this arrangement, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Part of me thought maybe it could work. Maybe I'd find someone who truly cared for me, not just as a person in need of help, but as someone worth loving. But now, after everything that's happened, I realize something. None of you should feel forced into this. If any of you are staying because of the contract, or because of money, you don't have to. I don't want anyone here out of obligation." His words hung in the air, raw and honest. Everyone stared at him, stunned by his vulnerability. This was not the cheerful, optimistic Daniel they were used to seeing. This was a man laying bare his fears and insecurities, confronting the reality of his situation head-on. Maya was the first to speak. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Daniel," she said softly, "you know I care about you. You've been nothing but kind to me, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity you and Eleanor have given me, but—" Her voice faltered, and she glanced down at her hands. "I can't stop thinking about my son. Liam needs me more than anyone else right now. As much as I admire you, and as much as I've grown fond of being here, I can't imagine raising him in a household where love feels conditional. I hope you understand." Daniel nodded slowly, his expression softening. "I do, Maya. Thank you for being honest with me." His gaze moved to Sophie, who looked visibly shaken. Her usual confidence seemed to have evaporated, replaced by uncertainty. Sophie cleared her throat nervously. I never meant for things to get so complicated, she admitted, her voice trembling. At first, I thought this job would give me direction, you know, something meaningful to focus on. And honestly, Daniel, you've taught me so much. You're one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. But she hesitated, biting her lip. I don't think I'm ready for something like marriage. Not yet. I see you as a friend, a really great friend. But romantic feelings? I don't feel them, and I don't want to lead you on or make promises I can't keep. Her confession was painful to hear, but Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he gave her a small, understanding smile. Thank you for telling me the truth, Sophie. That takes courage. Finally, all eyes turned to Priya, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. Her cheeks flushed as she realized everyone was looking at her. She fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, clearly struggling to find the right words. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't come here expecting to fall in love, Priya began, her accent thick with emotion. When I accepted this job, I thought it would be temporary, a way to start over in a new country. But then I got to know you, Daniel. I saw your kindness, your strength, your humor, and then I started to feel things I didn't anticipate. Things I wasn't sure I was allowed to feel. She paused, gathering her courage. I won't lie. It scares me. Loving someone isn't easy, especially under these circumstances. But if you'll have me, if you believe we can build something real together, I'm willing to try. Not because of the contract, but because I genuinely care about you. For a moment, the room fell silent. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise, and a flicker of hope lit up his face. He hadn't expected this outcome. Out of all the possibilities swirling in his mind, he hadn't dared to dream that one of them might actually choose him willingly. Eleanor, who had been quietly observing the scene, let out a shaky sigh. The weight of her decision, the plan she had devised with such good intentions, finally crashed down on her. She saw the pain in Daniel's eyes when Maya and Sophie rejected him, but she also saw the glimmer of joy when Priya confessed her feelings. It was a bittersweet moment, one that forced her to confront the flaws in her approach. Daniel, Eleanor said softly, breaking the silence. I never wanted this to hurt you. I only wanted to protect you, to ensure you wouldn't spend your life alone. But now I see that my plan may have done more harm than good. Love can't be arranged or forced. It has to grow naturally. If Priya is willing to stay, and if you both agree, then I support whatever decision you make. As for Maya and Sophie, I release them from their contracts. They're free to go without penalty. Her announcement brought a wave of relief to the room. Maya wiped away her tears, offering Daniel a grateful smile. Thank you for understanding, she said. And thank you for giving me this chance. I'll never forget what you've done for me and Liam. Sophie nodded vigorously, her guilt easing slightly. You're an incredible person, Daniel, don't ever doubt that. I hope we can still be friends even after I leave. Daniel managed a weak smile. Of course. I'll miss both of you, but I respect your honesty. That means more to me than anything. As the meeting came to an end, the mood in the mansion shifted. Maya began packing her belongings, preparing to return to her son full-time. Sophie announced her plans to move across the country, inspired by her experiences with Daniel to pursue a career in adaptive sports coaching. Both women left with heartfelt goodbyes, promising to stay in touch. Priya, meanwhile, stayed behind, her presence bringing a sense of calm to the household. Over the following weeks, she and Daniel grew closer, navigating the complexities of their relationship with patience and understanding. They talked openly about their fears, hopes, and dreams, building a foundation rooted in trust and mutual respect. Though challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, determined to create a life filled with love and authenticity. Eleanor watched these developments with a mixture of pride and regret. She had set out to secure Daniel's future, but in doing so, she had nearly jeopardized his happiness. Still, she took solace in knowing that her son was capable of finding love on his own terms, a testament to his resilience and character. For Daniel, the journey had been transformative. He had faced rejection, embraced vulnerability, and ultimately discovered a connection that felt genuine. As he sat beside Priya one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, he realized something profound. Love wasn't about perfection or guarantees. It was about choosing to stand by someone, flaws and all, and believing in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Months turned into years, and life at the Whitmore mansion evolved in ways no one could have predicted. The grand house, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now radiated a quiet sense of peace. Daniel and Priya had built a life together, a partnership rooted in authenticity, trust, and unwavering support. Their journey wasn't without its challenges, but they faced each obstacle as a team, growing stronger with every passing day. Priya's decision to stay had been met with mixed reactions from her family back in India. When she first told them about Daniel and their plans to marry, there was silence on the other end of the phone. Her parents, steeped in traditional values, struggled to understand how she could choose a man with disabilities over potential suitors in their community. For weeks, their calls were tense, filled with questions and veiled disapproval. But Priya stood firm, explaining that love wasn't about convenience or societal expectations. It was about seeing someone for who they truly were and choosing to walk beside them. Over time, her parents began to soften. They saw the joy in Priya's voice when she spoke about Daniel, heard the laughter in her stories, and eventually realized that she had found something rare and precious. During one particularly emotional video call, her mother broke down in tears, apologizing for doubting her daughter's happiness. "If he makes you happy," she said through sobs, "then we will welcome him into our family." That moment marked a turning point, not just for Priya and her family, but for Daniel too. He had always feared rejection, not just from society, but also from those closest to him. Yet here was proof that love could transcend prejudice and misunderstanding. It gave him the courage to embrace his relationship with Priya fully, knowing that she believed in him even when others didn't. Meanwhile, Maya and Sophie moved on to new chapters in their lives, though their connection to Daniel remained strong. Maya returned to her son Liam, dedicating herself entirely to raising him. With the financial stability Eleanor had provided during her time at the mansion, Maya was able to enroll Liam in a better school and secure a stable job closer to home. She often sent letters and photos to Daniel, updating him on Liam's progress. In one letter, she wrote, "You've given us more than you'll ever know. We're doing well because of you." Sophie, true to her adventurous spirit, relocated to California, where she pursued her dream of becoming an adaptive sports coach. Inspired by her time with Daniel, she dedicated herself to helping people with disabilities discover the joys of physical activity. Every few months, she'd send Daniel a postcard featuring breathtaking views of mountains, beaches, or forests, along with a short note, "Thinking of you and your endless optimism." Though miles apart, their friendship endured, a testament to the bond they had formed. Back at the mansion, Eleanor watched these developments with a mix of pride and reflection. She had initially set out to orchestrate Daniel's happiness, only to realize that true love couldn't be planned or controlled. Her plan, while well-intentioned, had nearly backfired, causing unnecessary strain on everyone involved. Yet, despite its flaws, it had led to unexpected outcomes that ultimately brought Daniel the companionship and fulfillment he deserved. Eleanor threw herself into philanthropy, channeling her energy into supporting causes related to disability advocacy and caregiver support. She organized fundraisers, hosted awareness campaigns, and even wrote op-eds about the importance of fostering inclusivity and understanding. Through her efforts, she hoped to make amends for the mistakes she had made and contribute positively to the world her son lived in. As for Daniel and Priya, their relationship continued to flourish. They learned to navigate the intricacies of life together, balancing Daniel's needs with Priya's aspirations. Priya encouraged Daniel to pursue his passion for writing, setting up a cozy corner in the study where he could work on his stories uninterrupted. In return, Daniel supported Priya's desire to reconnect with her cultural roots, teaching himself basic Hindi phrases and accompanying her to festivals and celebrations whenever possible. Their love story became a source of inspiration for those around them. Friends and neighbors marveled at how seamlessly they complemented each other, how Priya's calm patience balanced Daniel's occasional impulsiveness, and how his wit and humor brightened her quieter moments. Together they proved that love wasn't defined by physical ability or societal norms. It was about finding someone who saw the beauty in your soul and chose to cherish it. Years later, during a quiet evening at home, Daniel sat in his wheelchair, a book open on his lap. Priya joined him, curling up on the couch nearby. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garden. The house felt serene, almost magical. "You know," Daniel said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence, "people always ask me what it's like to live with a disability. They think it must be hard, and sometimes it is. But do you know what I tell them?" Priya tilted her head curiously. "What do you say?" "I tell them it's not the disability that defines me," he replied, his eyes twinkling. "It's the people around me, the ones who see me for who I am, not what I can or can't do. And I got lucky. I found someone who doesn't just see me clearly but loves me anyway." Priya smiled, reaching over to take his hand. "And I found someone who reminds me every day that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stand by someone, flaws and all, and believing in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their shared life, Daniel knew he had made the right choice. His journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Love, he realized, wasn't something that could be arranged or forced. It had to grow naturally, nurtured by honesty, respect, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. The Whitmore mansion, once a symbol of wealth and privilege, had transformed into a sanctuary of love and resilience. And within its walls, Daniel and Priya had created something extraordinary, a life built not on obligation or expectation, but on the simple yet profound act of choosing each other, again and again, no matter what the future held.